Dear students, welcome to my classroom of Research Methodology in History. Today, I am going to tell you something about disability studies and how we can see the reflection of the disabled minds in the popular culture, where I have mainly focused on literature along with one cinema, which is an Indian cinema, based on the life of a disabled person. First, I would like to ask you, what is the definition of disability for you? How can we define disability? Does disability mean only the physical disabilities, the deformities, or disability means the blocks or the blockage which we have? From that angle, it can be said that all of us are crippled or disabled with our own narrow ideas or perceptions. All of us are the slaves of our own desires. We are very much guided by our self-interests. So from that point of view, we are having a restricted life. We are looking at the things with our own vision and mission, which are not always holistic, or it's not always we are thinking to do the greatest good for the greatest number of people. So it's not like disability means that we are only highlighting the physical disability. Disability means how we are also trying to analyze our minds, which is something where we also find difficulties. Difficulties with regard to our reciprocation towards the social issues or towards the problems in our lives and also the problems of the society. When some people, they are very much obsessed or biased with their religious sentiments, that is also a kind of disability which causes communal violence. So mental disability should be treated as a part of the disability studies discourses. This is my opinion, but unfortunately, we only deal with the physical disabilities which we can witness. That makes us more human, and we also try to include those people who are having physical disabilities in the mainstream society. Some of them definitely are having mental disabilities as well, like autism, cerebral palsy, and others. We are also disabled. We are also caged. We are also confined, but we are not aware of our disabilities. So let's break this traditional perception on disability studies. Disability is something which is a very common phenomena, and it exists amongst all of us. Being a teacher or facilitator, when I am teaching my students, I must admit that I am also disabled with certain thoughts of mine which have restricted my thinking, which have made me biased or prejudiced. In that case, if we follow the postmodernist terms like what Derrida wanted to define as deconstruction, or the usage of language which can be a part of the broader discourses on grammatology, then disability with regard to the expression of thoughts must be included in the arena of disability studies. So, this particular concept needs re-examination or re-evaluation, where we can apply the postmodernist ideas to understand the scope of disability studies. Here I must say that if I would like to quote Nietzsche, then it's also important for us to understand the term disability, and it's very much apparent or relative. Nothing can be termed as truth as per the postmodernist ideology. All the facts are in between the truth and the apparent. So, what do we feel as disability which is visible or noticeable, which we are experiencing, might not be disability in its true sense if we try to follow the postmodernist ideas. So, this entire concept for me is very much vague and superficial. So, when we are talking about the disabled, then we are trying to create a kind of differentiation in the society which is something can be coined or can be synonym of the concept of discrimination. Differentiation and discrimination both are echoing the same idea, that is, how we are trying to create the politics of exploitation, where we are trying to create certain clusters in the society to show our power or to exercise our power over the people who are belonging to these small clusters, and they are known as marginalized. What Foucault once stated, that knowledge is power. So this entire concept of disability studies, what I feel, is very much exploitative and discriminatory, because whatever we are witnessing are not always true, and all of us are having disability to some extent if we go for psychosocial analysis. Now I would like to highlight on this particular fact that from 1960s onwards in the Western world, the so-called disabled people with physical deformities to a great extent and with certain sort of mental illnesses or certain sort of mental problems, they came forward and they started asking for their rights in the society. Because it's not like that the disabled people are the cursed people or they are unfortunate. They are also a very much part of our existence. I'm talking about the human society, but unfortunately the disabled, they never got that much recognition. That's why from 1960s or 70s onwards they raised their voice. And from that time onwards we find like how disability got a place in the discourses of academics. Like it became a part of the intellectual cross currents all over the world, especially in the Western countries. If I give you the example of Erving Goffman, who in 1963 wrote Stigma, where he expressed the various ways of projecting disability and how the society reciprocates towards disability and how the disabled people, they felt for themselves. So it is something like a dialectical understanding where we find that marginalization and exploitation play a pivotal role with regard to situating the disabled in the society. And the parameters of disability are also being decided by the society, which is not something what I can say transparent, because what I feel as a sign of disability might not be a sign of disability for others. If we consider a blind person as a disabled person, but if we see that he or she is very much capable to lead his or her life even better than a normal abled person, then we must question the definition of disability. So that is the argument of Goffman in his Stigma, which was published in the year 1963. I would also like to mention about Michel Foucault. On the one hand, he talked about knowledge. According to Foucault, knowledge is power. On the other hand, in his book, The History of Sexuality, he talked about the bodies. That means various bodies and our perceptions related to those bodies. That means he talked about the significance of the physical appearance, which is also very much important to situate one person in the society or his or her particular identity. So we are mostly giving emphasis on the biological entity, not the capability of a person with disability as well. So if anybody is having any kind of deformity which is visible, then we are categorizing that person as a disabled person. So that concept is also related to madness and also like how we create the idea of docile body, that if a person is insane, that is also his or her disability because they are not behaving as per the social norms. We must say that disability is something which can be considered as a social model, that where we should not give emphasis to the biological factors or to the physical appearance. Rather, we need to consider disability as a psychosocial component. Here I must say that what Simone de Beauvoir in her book The Second Sex, how she mentioned about the birth of a child and what was her experience, that she also tried to portray. For her, when a child is born, we always give his or her identity as per their physical appearance. A child when is born is neither a boy nor a girl, but the society decides that how the child has to be groomed and how he or she will be responding towards the society. This concept of he or she for Simone de Beauvoir is also something very much challenging, because someone is very much attached or prone to the feminine instincts, but he is a male and has to behave in that manner just to make others happy in the society, makes his presence very much marginalized. That is also a kind of disability when we are not giving proper recognition to someone's mental status and only highlighting someone's physical appearance. Perhaps Simone de Beauvoir, what she wanted to say, also paved the way for the future Pride movement, where the LGBTQA community, they talked for their existence. So this kind of reservation is also a part of disability studies, what Simone de Beauvoir wanted to portray, but unfortunately we do not follow that idea to make it a universal concept. For us, the blind people, the people who are born with certain deformities, the people who are having certain mental illnesses which are obviously visible, they are only the disabled people in our society. As I was talking about the popular culture, then literature is also a part of the same. Here my case study is based on literature. Now I want to share something about the Indian concepts, or like how the Indians are responding towards disability studies or towards this particular discourse. First I would like to start with One Little Finger by Malini Cheeb. So this entire book is her autobiography, which she typed with her little finger. She is a victim of cerebral palsy along with other physical deformities. One movie is scripted, and later on, like one movie we had on her life, and the name of the movie is Margarita with a Straw. Malini wrote her autobiography in the year 2011. So I must mention about the novel by Charles Dickens, where he talked disability, or what I may say that in 1843, when he wrote Christmas Carol, there he mentioned about the tiny Tim who was disabled. And in this context, I must mention like that when Malini, she wrote her autobiography, where also we find the plight of the disabled people, then here we can make a commonness with regard to this particular thought, irrespective of the barriers between the East and the Western world. One more book which is important, that is by Nasima Hurzak. The name of the book is Nasima, The Incredible Story, which was published in the year 2005. Nasima, she spent, and still she is in wheelchair. She established one organization for the disabled people, and she helps them to a great extent. She is an example for others. In her book, she wrote about her sufferings, like that her wish, her desires. She wanted to be a dancer, but unfortunately, she cannot move her leg and fingers, and her entire body is mostly paralyzed. But still, she has the dream to fly high, which is also reflected in her story. That is Nasima, The Incredible Story. Next, I would like to mention the book by Jija Ghosh, where she has tried to mention her thoughts, her presence, which is restricted in her wheelchair. Her entire story, which is known as the River of Time, tells us her life, which is in wheelchair, and how wheelchair has become a metaphor for Jija to express her grief and agony. So what I have discussed in this lecture, I have tried to give you certain ideas which are definitely scattered. You need to, what I can say, you need to assemble all these ideas to get a broader view, which is not something restricted, but which talks about universalism. How we can include the disabled people in the mainstream society. We have many professionals who are having physical disabilities to a great extent. Some of them are having blindness, some of them are having walking problems, and many more. Sometimes they have to face body shaming and humiliations from the society. But now we are trying to make people aware of this issue, so that we should also respect the disabled people, because they are very much normal like us. If I talk on popular culture, that does not mean that we should always focus on the literature or movie or any kind of, what I can say, performing art or any kind of artistic way of expression. Our daily life can be a part of this popular culture, that how we are practicing a certain concept and making people aware of it. So, if we would like to situate disability studies in the arena of research methodology, then I must say that in India, the awareness level is very low, unfortunately. We are very much tabooed, or we are always not that much open to the people who are having disability. A person who has to have wheelchair all the time is not that much capable to avail bus or any other public transport in India. And here the disabled people, they have to be privileged with money, otherwise the treatment which they get are not always acceptable and good for their physical and mental wellness. We need to have more movies like Margarita with a Straw about the disabled people, so that we should be aware and human towards them. I am not that much sure that in how many universities or in colleges or in schools we have the autobiography by Malini or by Jija as one of the topics for their syllabus. Do we have any particular syllabus on disability studies? No, we don't. Still in India, disability studies is not a part of the mainstream discussions related to humanities, science and social sciences. So we need to be more aware and sensitize others about disability, and we need to follow that what Simone de Beauvoir stated once, that we born like what we are, and we have to accept ourselves without any reservation, and that reservation is always something which has been created or constructed by the society. So I would like to end my lecture with that kind of postmodernist notion that what we are experiencing or seeing is not always true. So this entire concept of disability studies, what I feel is also not a truth or a priori, and here we need to have more interventions so that there would be no disability studies as well. We should have psychoanalysis research to prove this argument that all of us are disabled in our own world, and that has to be taken into account. Thank you.